I was just told I can't see my speaker notes, which I was really counting on, so that's okay. So please bear with me. We may have a really short talk. All right, as Alexander said, my name is Leah Silen. I'm the Executive Director of NumFOCUS, and I am so grateful to be here today. I want to thank the organizers, the organizing committee for inviting me to speak. It's definitely an honor, and thank you, each of you, for sharing your valuable time to listen. All right, so this is a photo that was taken at the first PyData Berlin that Alexander just mentioned. We had right under 200 people attending. It was our 6th PyData event ever, and the second PyData event in Europe, right after PyData London that took place a few months before. So we were very excited. I had the privilege of working with an awesome local organizing committee from the area, 6 people who were just fantastic. They were true leaders, and they put on an incredible event and consecutively held PyData Berlin events moving forward. That was back when NumFOCUS was 2 years old. It had 1 employee. We have 20 today. And it had only 4 projects. And we're at 65 plus today, and another 70 affiliated projects. So wow, look how we've grown. It's exciting to see the beginning, and it's also exciting to look to the future. Okay, so the title of my talk, A View from My Window, an outside perspective of open source scientific computing from the inside. A window is something we look out of. It allows us to see images, and it allows sunlight to come in, but it's also a means of observing and a way that we can learn. And our vision depends on our perspective. So our perspective can be very different. It can change from our vantage point, but more importantly, and much more of a transformational change, is that your vision, your perspective, is from your life experiences. So the way we view things, the perspective that we have, is from all the life experience that we've held. It's a consistent bringing in data from past experiences, from current experiences as they happen, and then our incredible brains take that, analyze that data, and create a model from us to draw from that our perspectives are viewed. Sounds a little like AI. We have this perspective, and we use it to view everything from that lens. So how can we have an external perspective from the inside? This is when I need my notes. Every time I pause, I'm thinking, what were those wonderful things that I had notes on to say? An external perspective, I say I have an external perspective from my position. I was introduced to the open source scientific computing projects that NumFOCUS supports and provides services for in a very different way than most. I have, or most users, and most of you probably in this room, I had, when I started this position, zero knowledge of scientific computing, zero knowledge of open source software, zero knowledge of scientific computing, software computing. I knew software, I used software daily, but had no knowledge beyond that. So it was very new to me. My perspective was definitely one from the outside. And is an outside perspective a bad thing? I don't think so. It definitely can have some disadvantages. There can be conversations where there's a huge learning curve, but it also gives you a fresh look and a fresh approach to solving problems, to looking at a community and not being inside the community where you're so involved in what's going on in it just every day, that it's nice to have something, to have someone to be able to view that from a new perspective, where yes, they may not know all the ins and outs, but they also may have some very helpful ideas, suggestions, and they may be able just to create an organization that is very keyed in on that service and not the work. So NumFOCUS provides service to open source scientific computing projects. We don't write code. We don't provide technical direction. We provide needed services. And so having that external perspective can be very helpful. But after working at NumFOCUS for 12 years and daily serving the needs of open source projects, I have been able to have a very in-depth internal perspective of projects' needs. I didn't come to know projects because I needed to solve a problem or I needed to use them. I was introduced to the projects that NumFOCUS supports from the maintainers, from the needs of maintainers, learning about their needs and how we could serve them. So it's a very different perspective than being a user of that tool. It's understanding what needs need to be served. It's understanding how you can support them, support their internal communities, support the user communities, and that be your sole focus. So it's an inside perspective, but it is on the outside, and I recognize that. And there are days I'm thinking, wow, there's so many people that we serve, and they're so passionate about what they do. And they're doing these incredible things that are changing the world. I wish I could do that. But then I see my inbox, and I see all the needs that people have, and I see the incredible staff members that NumFOCUS have that are working on behalf of these projects to meet their needs. And I know I'm needed on the other side. I'm needed as an outsider from the inside. So we're going to touch, perhaps very quickly, on these areas. I'm sorry, I had a wonderful timer up that just disappeared. This is how things have been going lately. Okay. Yes, I also didn't have Wi-Fi in my hotel room for the last 2 days when I was supposed to be working. we're going to talk about projects as people. We're going to look at leaders versus leadership and education as the fuel of sustainability. And last but not least, the irony of project support. So I hope that by sharing my perspective and observations and things I have learned, it will help you. It will maybe broaden your perspective or maybe help to empower you through seeing things differently, to get involved, to get going on an initiative you've been waiting to do, starting a new project. All right, let's start with part one, projects. My favorite thing. All right, here's a bunch of logos. These are currently the projects that NumFOCUS is fiscally sponsoring, so we call them our sponsored projects. We provide a comprehensive suite of project services. When you look at these, and if you can just think for a minute, it may be one of these, it may be something else, of your favorite open source tool that you use. Okay, everyone got a tool in mind? I realize this is very small and you probably can't see all of these, but any open source tool will be great. Now, as you're thinking about that, you're probably thinking about how you use it, how helpful it is in your daily lives. It may be on a work level, it may be for work you're doing outside of work. You may be using it to help speed your work, the efficiency of your work. You're probably thinking about all these things. That's what most of us think about when we're thinking about a tool that we use. I know when I think about a tool I use, a tool I have at home, I reach for it, I go to use it, I'm thinking, I need this to work. And if it doesn't work, I get really frustrated. And I'm sure that's probably the same with maybe your favorite or maybe your not so favorite open source tool. So we're thinking about that work. What I don't think about when I'm using a tool is how it ended up in my hands, how it was created, who created it, who designed it. However, it would be nice to think about the person that invented it or created it. Sometimes I do, if it's something really interesting and I'm like, wow, I'm really glad someone created this, but I don't know who. And I guess I could do some research. But me not knowing doesn't really affect how well that particular tool works. It doesn't make a difference in its availability to others. It's not super important. But open source projects are very different. We need to think more about the people behind them. They're incredible. They're doing a lot of hard work for all those who use their particular software. And they're working with an internal project community, which is not an easy process. People from all over the world, and also trying to answer many users' questions, responding on GitHub, responding on Slack, however that may be, that there's a communication forum. There's a lot going on. It's important to recognize the contributors, the maintainers, the project leaders of these open source tools. They need more recognition. And I think just making sure that when you're having conversations about them, you are talking about the people behind them, how those people can be supported. When I see these logos, I see them just as you do, but I also see these people. This is what I really think of when I see a logo to a project. I think of the people behind it. Now, this is nowhere near inclusive of all those with NumFOCUS projects. These are images I could grab from GitHub, but it's important to know that yes, they're projects, and we talk about them as a certain project, but they're also people. And they have incredible stories, and they have needs, and I'm fortunate enough to get to help meet their needs and work with a great team that's doing so on a daily basis. That brings us back to leaders, because project contributors, project maintainers, no matter what role they play in their project governance, they are leaders. To lead is to provide direction, to guide, and most importantly, to serve. We have opportunities to lead all the time. Anyone can lead. Anyone can be a leader. Sometimes these opportunities come up daily. Sometimes they don't come up quite as often. But we can all serve, we can all help, and we can all guide others. Leaders, the most important thing I think leaders do, and we're going to talk in a minute about what makes a good leader, but leaders empower others. And that means that you're not just directing, you're guiding, you're helping others to reach their goals. But in order for leaders to empower, they have to be able to lead. And there are many challenges to leading. We're going to talk about just a few. And I think I know these and have no problem with no notes on the challenges that I see leaders in this community. Because there's incredible leaders in our community. There's project leaders, the organizers of this event. And if you've ever been on an organizing team for an event, you know the challenges of that and also the rewards when you see the attendees come in and have a great experience. But there can be challenges. Maybe you're in a leadership position that you didn't really want. Maybe you weren't planning on signing up for that position or volunteering, but you were in a group, you were having a discussion, there was work to be done, and no one was stepping up. So you're like, I have no time to do this, but it's important. Okay, I'll do it, but I'm gonna let them know I don't have a lot of time. That usually doesn't work. Or it may just be that you're unsure or unclear or about the goals of what you're doing, who you're leading. What are the expectations? Maybe you didn't know them. Maybe you're trying to lead in a way that just isn't fit for that group. Because as leaders, we get better with experience. So we're all leaders, and like most things in life, we get better with practice. So every time you lead, every time you help, serve, direct, or guide someone, you're getting better. So I pose the question, is being a less than optimal, because I don't want to say a bad leader or a poor leader, so we'll say less than optimal. Is that intentional? I don't think so, rarely. I don't think many people in our community set out and say, wow, yeah, I'm just gonna give about 10% here. That's not the way it usually goes. So what makes someone a good leader? I think I have one more slide here again. As we talked about at the very beginning, they empower. They empower others. They allow others to grow and others to lead. If we think of empowerment as a pipeline, you empower someone, they empower someone else. And this is incredibly important in our community because we have so many people working together, working on projects, working on events, working on sprints and mentorship programs and hackathons, and working again inside those internal project communities. So empowering others means giving them an opportunity to also lead, but to also make great things happen. Part 3, education, the fuel of sustainability. Education is knowledge, and I think we've all heard the phrase or saying or aphorism, knowledge is power. But education, again, is empowerment. So we keep coming back to that. Education empowers you, and it helps you to empower others by sharing that knowledge. Education is extremely important to the success of open source projects. We educate all the way and at every point on a project's growth cycle. Whether it's a beginning project and we're educating people to become new contributors, trying to gain and diversify our contributor base, it's all about education, sharing knowledge, gaining new users, again, training, having tutorials. So new contributors, gaining new users. It's also about educating those who you want to support your project, educating them on what you're doing. We rarely look at fundraising as education, but you have to be able to share that knowledge. You have to explain why. What is your project doing? So it's important for new contributors. It's important to keep those contributors and also educate them as they contribute to where they can move in to a maintainer position. We have to have that contributor maintainer pipeline also for project sustainability. So education drives project success. I think it's an important thing to remember. We talk about a lot of different reasons for projects to be successful. And we normally don't think of education, but I've observed in every step of the way, in so many areas, it's that education. Whether you're getting a grant and you're educating those that are working on the grant, it's an exchange of knowledge. It's sharing knowledge. Again, education is the fuel of sustainability. Part 4, the irony of project support. I could say a lot about this, so I'll try to keep it somewhat short. When I started working at NumFOCUS, and I think I have the same thoughts on this today, the thing that shocked me and disturbed me the most was to learn that those who are using and who are dependent upon these projects, most of them being corporations, universities also, but that's a different story when we're talking about project support. There's lots of opportunities there. But they don't give back. And not only do they not give back, they seem to have no problem with it. Now, there are some people, before I go into my semi-tangent, there are incredible people that are rising up to be leaders in the open source space by funding the projects their company uses. They understand how it works. They understand that developers need to get paid. They understand the importance of paying for something you're using. Now, open source software is free, right? So they don't have to pay for it. We all know the answer to that. We could all respond. But I will tell you, most companies who are using open source tools also know. They also know that answer. I talk over the years and recently, we've talked to so many who are using some of those project logos that were up there. And they will say, we love NumFOCUS. We love the projects that you help support. We use them every day. We're so dependent on them. We couldn't live without them. Oh, that's great. Would you like to get engaged with the community and talk about project support? This is what you hear most often. We don't really have budget for that. Maybe talk to us next year. Well, why didn't you budget for it to begin with? You know you're using the tool. Might sound a little harsh, but if you're using the project, you should plan on paying for it, because most companies pay for the proprietary tools they're using. I think they probably pay for all of them. And they don't tell those companies, well, we really don't have budget right now, so we'll just keep using, is that okay? We'll just keep using your software or your product, and we'll pay you for it when we get around to having budget. That usually doesn't work. Companies are more than willing to pay for tools they're using, from laptops to labels. There's an allocated budget item for it. And I hope and am happy to share the message as much as I can that open source projects will also be paid for in some way. Again, it's knowledge. It's sharing the knowledge. You have to be able to educate those. So please help me. Help us in educating those who are using the tools, that they have the knowledge to give back, and also understand how important it is. That user, contributor, maintainer communication, that's key, and definitely part of that empowerment pipeline. I should have used this slide before, but more than 50% of Fortune 500 companies are using open source software and using them for mission-critical workloads. This is according to the Forrester Consulting study. So 50%. We've got a lot of educating to do. So I hope that by sharing what I see from my window and from my perspective that is a little bit different because it's an internal and external perspective and all at the same time, I hope that it'll help you to maybe look at things a little differently and know the importance of empowering others. Thank you.